Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, and a very good day to all my students. Well, now we're going to proceed with the new topic, which is about the third topic of our course, which is research process. Basically, what we're trying to achieve in this topic is for you to understand all those steps that involve in a research project. Bear in mind that this topic have to do and related with what we have discussed in the previous two topics before. Okay, before we go further on those steps involved in the research and so on, let me get you back to the track and try to understand and try to recall what we have done in the past class. Well, as you all know, as I mentioned in the last class, research actually is something has to do with academic. And when we talk about academic, we are talking as well about theory. Theory and research are those things which is very, very related to one and each others. And we might use theory before we conduct a research, and we also might conduct a research and later on come up with a theory. This is the two process that I believe that you need to understand, all my dear students. Okay, if we start with a theory, then only we move on with our research. This is one way of how we can conduct research, and this is what we call as deduction process. So, what is deduction process? Well, let me put what is deduction simply as this. When we talk about deduction, actually it refers to the process where we initiate a research based on the theory or based on what people has done before. In other words, what we are doing is we try to confirm, we try to test, we want to know how reliable, how valid this theory related to what we want to study. So this is what we call as deduction process. Another what we call strategy or process in conducting research, we call it as induction. Okay, let me repeat again. The first one we have deduction, and the second one we have what we call as induction. So what is induction? Well, when we talk about induction, it is a process that we contribute to the theory based on what we have gathered in the research. Meaning to say, what we got from the research, the data, the information, later on we will conclude and try to explain or try to relate with what we call theory. So basically, this is some fundamental understanding about how we conduct a research. Let me again emphasize here, when we talk about research, we cannot run away from theory. It's either the theory came first or later on, but research always relate with theory. Okay, I hope that you are very clear with my explanation. And can we proceed with the next slide? Thank you. So now let's move on to what are the steps that involve when we want to conduct a research. Today I'm going to share with you, I'm going to provide with you with understanding steps, which is I'm going to discuss 8 steps which can help us to plan our research. Let's move to the first step. The first step is a very crucial step. This step, what we call it as to identify the topic or the area that we're interested to do research on. Okay, so a research must start with something that very focused that we want to understand. Once we identify a topic, later on what we will do is we're going to have the second step, which is to identify the problem statements. What is problem statement? Alright, go back to our last topic, the second topic. We have discussed about some concepts that is very important in research. So one of the concept is problem statements. So problem statement basically are things that trigger us, things that make us interested to know more, or things that we need to solve. This is what we call as a problem statement. So basically, when we talk about problem statement, how do we get problem statement? As I mentioned just now, it can be first because we want to solve a problem. Maybe we want to know more, or maybe we want to confirm whether this thing still okay, this thing still needed or not. So problem statement is the second step after we identify what we want to research on. Now, after we have identified our problem statement, the next step, the third step, is to identify what is our theoretical framework. Students, my dear student, you still remember in the very early of my presentation just now, we did discuss about theory and research. So this is where we emphasize or we practice our understanding based on the theory, try to relate with the so-called our research. In order for us to conduct a research, to try to understand something, there must be a theory, or there must be some models, or there must be some explanation that able to help us to relate if we want to know this and what is the effect. If we understand this, what is the consequences? This is what we call a theoretical framework. Once we have identified our theoretical framework, next thing is we will construct what we call hypothesis. So what is hypothesis? You still remember the second topic that we discussed before? Again, hypothesis we have discussed as one of the main concept that every researcher, you as a student of research method class, should be able to know. Hypothesis, simply I can say that is a kind of statement, kind of ideas that try to make an early assumption about something. When we have a hypothesis, so we know in our research what we try to relate with. This is what we call as hypothesis. Well, now let's move to the fifth of this research process step. The fifth process or step will be about research design. Maybe you're not very familiar with what is research design, but basically this is what we're going to focus starting from topic number 8, number 9, and later on. Simply, when we talk about research design, we are talking about how are we going to conduct our research? How are we going to collect our data? Who is our respondent? What is our data? And so on. So research design is something like your strategic planning about how you're going to conduct your research. Well, research design is something is very, very important. Well, at this stage, I might just brief you that we might use at least two main major techniques of what we call doing this, what we call research. Is either qualitative or quantitative, right? So now let's move to the step number 6. So what is step number 6? Step number 6 is a step about how are we going to collect our data. This is an extension of the research design. Basically, when we talk about data collection, is about the practical of our research. When we talk about research design, is our planning. When we talk about data collection, is exactly what and how we going to collect our data. Is a practical part. And after we collect the data, the next step that we have is the very important, very crucial one, is to deal with our data. Or we can simply say that this is the coding and the data analysis process or steps. Yet, as I mentioned to you just now, we have two main types of how we design our research, whether it's qualitative and quantitative. So in the topic number 8 and topic 9, we will discuss more and more. There are so many, there are various ways on how we can actually collect our data and analyze it. Basically, if you're doing quantitative, we're going to use SPSS. If you are doing qualitative, we might use a software such as NVivo. Alright, so the last step in the research process is what we call as to produce the report. A research with the data, with the analysis, without report is something can consider as meaningless. Because why we do research? Because we want to tell people. Why we do research? Because we want to find way to do or to solve some problems. So with the report, others can read. With the report, people can learn from what we have got. My dear student, so basically this is all the process that involve about a research. I would like to conclude here. Overall, at least there must be 8 steps that we're going to engage or we're going to go through when we are doing a research. Bear in mind, all these steps is very important, and we're going to discuss very detailed of each of these steps in the next following topics. So, for today, we have discussed about the relationship between theory and research, and also what are the steps need to be taken and also planned when we are talking about doing a research. So, that's all for today. I hope that you have learned so many things, and don't forget to refer to your references, books and so on for more details. So, once again, thank you very much and see you next time.